Hello and welcome to Model Aviation Live. I'm your host, Jay Smith. I'm the executive editor of Model Aviation and Park Pilot magazines, and I'm happy to share some interesting news with you with AMA news, Model Aviation news, and of course, we're going to have a special guest on today. I wanted to start out our conversation today telling you a little bit about the fact that the SIG RC fly-in is back on. It was supposed to be earlier this year, and unfortunately it got canceled, and it's now been rescheduled, and it'll be September 16th and 17th, so roughly a month from right now. Obviously, it'll be at SIG's location, and we're really excited to hear that that's coming back and happening, and the plan is for Hazel to be there and celebrate her 100th birthday, and she's looking forward to seeing everyone attend, and so it sounds like it's going to be a great flying event. As it stands right now, my plan is to be there, and if it all works out, I'm going to be broadcasting live from the show. This show, Model Aviation Live, will be live from the SIG RC fly-in because the 16th of September is when the next show is. So I'm really excited. I've never had the opportunity to do the show on the road, so to speak, or anywhere outside of Muncie. So really excited about that. The plan is to have Herb on the show and to have Hazel on the show. So wanted to let everyone know, if they hadn't heard yet, that the event has been rescheduled and is back on. And hopefully we'll get a lot of SIG aircraft there and a lot of people in attendance. Also here locally, starting the end of next week into next weekend, is the Hoosier Dawn Patrol. Obviously, World War I and early aviation event. And I received a phone call this week telling me to make sure that I come out because there's going to be a 16-foot wingspan aircraft that's going to be flying at the Hoosier Dawn Patrol. So that's really exciting. It's going to be it's not World War I. It's going to be a pioneering prior to World War I aircraft. It does meet it's under the 125 pounds, and it's been certified. So all the paperwork's in place, but a 16-foot wingspan, 77-pound model aircraft will be flying the end of next week into next weekend at the Hoosier Dawn Patrol. So if you're local to Muncie, I suggest you come and check it out. It's a great event. They're expecting a lot of pilots to attend. And I probably should mention, I hadn't planned to mention this, but since we're talking about World War I, the Dawn Patrol, it's called the Dawn Patrol Rendezvous over in Dayton, Ohio, is happening this year. It was canceled 2 years ago due to COVID. So this is the first time it's happening in 4 years. And it normally only happens every other year. So I spoke to Lee McDuffie, who handles the RC portion of it, because this show is full scale World War I and early aviation and modeling. And you've got the museum and you got all kinds of vendors that attend this show. I've been there 3 times. One of my favorite aviation artists, Russell Smith, is there with his artwork. And there's several people there selling books and, memorabilia of the time. So it's definitely worth checking out. And it'll be in early October. The Dayton Dawn Patrol Rendezvous is in early October in Dayton, Ohio. Hadn't planned to mention that today, but since we're talking about World War I, if you were not familiar with that show, it's definitely a really great show, and the museum is fantastic if you've never been there. So something to keep in mind. So hopefully we'll see people at the Hoosier Dawn Patrol next week, and I plan to go to the Hoosier and the Dayton Dawn Patrol Rendezvous. So hope to see people there. Come talk to me if you see me there. Love to chat with you about the magazine and AMA. Next thing I want to share with you is, that obviously I love all things aviation, like all of us do. And one of the things I love is aviation books. And you can't see it too well in my camera, but there's 3 bookcases in this office, my home office. And I've picked up a few other books that I mentioned briefly on AMA Air that I thought you might be interested to hear about. And the first one is a book called Model Airplanes and the American Boy, 1927 to 1934. And that was done by Frank Zayak. And basically what Frank did was reprint all the articles that appeared in the publication of American Boy from that time period, 1927 to 1934. And he gifted a copy to Frank Ealing. And so he signed it to Frank Ealing. And as you can see on the screen here, for his dedication to tradition, signed Frank Zayak. I now own this book that you're seeing here that's autographed. I found it, strangely enough, on eBay. So this was Frank Ealing's personal copy of the book, Model Airplanes of the American Boy, 1927 to 1934. And I'm going to give you a quick history lesson just in case either Frank Ealing or Frank Zayek aren't familiar to you. I'll tell you just briefly a little bit about both of them. So Frank Ealing was our technical director for over 20 years at AMA, and he is responsible for the AMA Cub. He designed the AMA Cub, and I believe that the number of Cubs built is believed to be over 3 million, if I'm not mistaken. So that's, just a snippet about Frank Ealing. Now, Frank Zayek, he actually is involved with the name Model Aviation. Frank Zayek and Lieutenant H.W. Alden started the publication Model Aviation in 1935. The first time Model Aviation was ever seen or named as a publication was in 1935, and Frank Zayek was half of that. Again, now, there's a lot of things that Frank did, but to keep it short, he also was one of the founders of the AMA in 1936. Now, obviously, if you want to learn more about either one, you can go to the History Project and look them up. Or, if you want to, just a quick way to do it, you can just go straight to Google and Google their names, and the History Project will come up, and it'll give you, a few pages of details about both these gentlemen. But I was really excited to find this. I wanted to buy a copy of it because I'm going back and reading some early model aviation publications and books. And this is one of the ones I wanted to get. And when I was searching for it on eBay, I found that 2 copies were signed, and I like signed books. So that kind of drew my interest. The first one was signed to someone that I was not familiar with, and this was the second one. So the book is in new condition. So I was really excited to add that to my collection and read the book, and just have that connection to 2 people that were very instrumental in the early days of the AMA. So that's one really interesting story. Another interesting story is back, I believe it was in 2017, I went to AMA Expo East, and we had a really special guest there, and that was Nikolay Sikorsky, the son of Igor Sikorsky. And our giant scale columnist had invited him to come. He had gotten to know him because he himself was building, our giant scale columnist, Sal Calvagna, was building a Sikorsky aircraft, and he had reached out to the museum, and he became friends with Nikolay. So Nikolay came to the expo, and he was interviewed at the expo, and I got to meet him and talk to him for 10 or 15 minutes. It was super interesting gentleman. He talked about growing up with his father and helping with the company in aviation. But actually, he was a musician. Nikolay was a musician, so he didn't follow the aviation path. He was a violinist and very famous in music. But he did have stories about the early days when he was a boy working with his father, and some other interesting stories about the company, about Sikorsky Aircraft Company. So it was really neat for Sal to make that connection, Sal Calvagna, and be able to bring him to the event. Now, sadly, Nikolay passed away last year, and I actually found a copy of one of the books written by Eddie Rickenbacher, which I'm sure most of you know is the highest scoring U.S. ace of World War I. He also owned the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for 20 years. And before World War I, he actually raced at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So Eddie Rickenbacher was an autograph that I always wanted. And I found his book, 7 Came Through. Eddie Rickenbacher's book, 7 Came Through. And it's autographed by Eddie Rickenbacher to Nikolay Sikorsky. It says, "To my young friend, Nikolay Sikorsky," and it's signed by Eddie Rickenbacher in 1966. So there on your screen is a picture of the book with the autograph. I know you probably can't see it super well. And then on the right is, on the far right is Nikolay. Of course, that's me in the middle, and Sal Calvagna, our giant scale columnist. Behind Sal, you can't see much of it. You can just see a little bit of the wing. That's the airplane that Sal built that came from the Sikorsky Aircraft Company. So it was really awesome to be able to finally get Eddie Rickenbacher's autograph, but not only that, to have it signed to someone that I got to meet. And Nikolay kept that book in his personal collection until he passed. And whoever was responsible for the estate apparently sold some of his books, and this was one of them. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of a neat story. It does tie in with our expo, and so I thought it'd be interesting to share that. And then I have one more story to share that we talked about briefly on AMA Air, and that is, after over 20 years of searching, I was able to find the pilot's handbook for the Helldiver. And as a lot of you may know, my great aunt, she built the Curtiss Helldiver as a Curtiss cadet working for Curtiss Wright in Columbus, Ohio from 1943 to 1945. And one of my aunt's jobs was to write addendums to the pilot's manual, to this pilot's manual written in Columbus, Ohio. So I had been trying to find one of these for over 20 years, and they're not easy to find, as you might expect. And I just found one in the last month. Since the last show, I found this manual. You're looking at the front page. At the bottom right, you'll notice it says airplane number. I took that airplane number and I did some research to find out about the airplane or the pilot that manual ended up in the airplane. And it turns out that airplane was lost on June 20th, 1944. It was a night mission. The pilot was Lieutenant Commander Blitch. He led the night mission. He was, in command of the entire mission. And after they bombed some targets, I think it was some shipping targets, if I'm not mistaken, they were attacked by Japanese Zeros. And the pilot, Lieutenant Commander Blitch, was hit in the back of the head, and he either blacked out or passed out. And the next thing he knew, he was in the ocean. The plane had crash landed in the ocean, and the water rushing into the airplane awoken him from whatever, whether he blacked out or passed out. He was able to exit the airplane and was picked up. Sadly, we don't know what happened to the gunner. And I spoke to his son. Lieutenant Commander Blitch is no longer living, but I actually have since talked to his son, and they don't know what happened to the gunner in the back of the airplane, if he bailed out or what happened. He was unfortunately never seen again. But Lieutenant Commander Blitch was rescued, and at the end of his career, he retired as a rear admiral. So it was really interesting and exciting to get this book. It was a little bit the pilot's manual. It was really a little bit bittersweet because over the last 30 years, I would give everything I could find Helldiver related to my aunt, and she passed away last year at 98. So sadly, I found it too late to give to her, but obviously it has a lot of meaning to me. And then to be able to research the aircraft that it was assigned to and find the son, who also was an officer in the Navy. And interestingly, last quick interesting story, the son has actually wrote a book sort of about his father. He actually was trying to write a historical book about his father, but he found it was hard to get past page 30 or 40. So he decided to turn it into a work of fiction about a World War II aviator who comes back to his family farm and struggles to get back into farming and civilian life. And then he meets a love interest. So I guess it maybe is kind of a romance novel, but he shared with me that all of the recollections in the book about the lead character's military experience is 100% fact. It's not fictionalized. It's 100% fact about Lieutenant Commander Blitch. So I will likely be picking that up more to read about the experiences of him with the Helldiver. So anyway, just some neat finds that I wanted to share with you. And I was thinking about several years ago, our safety columnist, Dave Gee, wrote a feature article for Model Aviation about finding things on eBay. And the lead photo was him and his computer with a stack of kits, free flight kits that he had bought off eBay. And I'm sure I don't have to tell you, but if you spend long enough on eBay, you'll definitely find, something you think you need or want. But, for having looked at eBay for over 20 years, that's where I found the pilot's handbook. So anyway, a few neat finds. That like I said, I appreciate aviation. I also collect autographs. So I just wanted to share those few finds with you, but I don't want to take up any more time because I want to let our guest have some time. We have some neat things to talk about. So our guest today is Stan Alexander, who is the RC Scale columnist for Model Aviation magazine. Hi, Stan.
Hi.
How are you?
Doing good.
And I know you're a book collector because you and I have talked about that, and you have several books and autograph books, so you can appreciate that.
Sure.
So, for those watching, Stan, I'm sure most people would be familiar with you because how many years now have you been the columnist for RC Scale?
I don't know. I
It's
really don't. A long time.
it's over 14 years because I've been at AMA for 14 years and you were here when I
Yeah.
came. So it's over 14 years. But for those that aren't as familiar, Stan, kind of give us just a quick overview of your how you got started in the hobby, and just give us like a quick overview of your hobby background.
Okay. Well, I started in Boy Scouts, and I was building plastic models and free flight models. And I had a friend in Scouts who introduced me to control line flying with a Cox PT-19. And so I went and bought my own PT-19. And then I went through about three or four of those and, was building balsa and plywood control line kits. And then after Scouts was over with and I got married, I decided I wanted to fly RC. So I've been doing that now for about 45 years.
I also started my control line on the same airplane, a Cox PT-19, and I have one here at the house. It's not my original one or my second or third one. I don't know what happened to those, but I purchased it from the Knights of the Round Circle several years ago at AMA Expo. They were using them to train new pilots in control line, and
Yeah,
they switched to a colorplast uh, aircraft, and they were selling off like five or six of the PT-19 Cox aircraft. So I picked the nicest one they had and purchased it. And I've never flown it. It's more of just to remember those early days because when I was growing up, the elementary school was just at the end of the street that I lived on. And I used to go to the elementary school and fly the Cox PT-19. And, speaking of eBay, if you go on eBay and look for Cox aircraft, they're pretty expensive. A PT-19 is usually over $100. And speaking of the Helldiver, there was a Cox Helldiver control line model, and one of those just came up, and they want $400 for it. So if you want to do like I did and buy something from your youth or your beginnings in modeling, it's gotten kind of expensive.
yeah. I've been looking for a Sterling Eindecker E3. I had one of those, and I built it as a free flight model. Wasn't very successful with it, but in Tennessee, you live in an area where there are lots of trees. As you well know, trees love to eat airplanes.
Yes, yes. Well,
So,
Stan, one of the things that we wanted to chat about with you is that you attended the RC Scale Nats. You did our Nats news coverage,
yeah.
and we have 26 photos that you provided that are on our Flickr page. And before we'll share some of those photos and talk a little bit about the Nats experience this year for RC Scale. But for those that aren't aware, we do have AMA has a Flickr page, and we have photos up there from just about any event that we would have coverage of. So it's definitely a great resource to visit our Flickr page. And we have there's the address to get to our Flickr page,
Okay.
flickr.com/photos/model aircraft. But we have different um, folders, I guess you'd call it, on there, different albums, I think is how they call it. And it's listed by event. So you can, if there's another portion of the Nats you're interested in, or if you're interested in a different event that we either had take place at AMA or that we went to cover, you'll find the photos here. So that's definitely a resource that you should look at if you'd like to see some photos. But Stan, let's talk today a little bit about what your experiences were with RC Scale, and let's take a look at some of the photos, and feel free to share some insight on some of the photos.
Okay, the first photo up there at the top, the Albatross D5A, belongs to Joe Vermillion. And Joe flew that, if memory serves me correctly, in Fun Scale Open. And the airplane is just gorgeous in flight. The kit is available from Balsa USA. Of course, Joe works for Balsa USA too. And it flew very scale like. It's a beautiful, beautiful model. And so there we go.
I saw that at the Fun Fly. He had it at the Fun Fly. It is beautiful.
Yes, it is. And the second photo up there is of the raffle plane this year that is provided to NASA by Legend Hobby. And that plane will be raffled off next month at the 8th annual NASA Scale Classic. And it will be held at Butler Aircraft Modelers Society in West Sunbury, Pennsylvania. And this plane will come ready to fly. All you've got to do is charge the batteries, fill the gas tank, and sync your radio, and you're ready to go. But it'll come JR has provided all the radio gear with a premium radio to boot. And it's just fantastic the way the sponsors have come in to help NASA. Now, some people may wonder, well, what does NASA do with all the money they collect from these raffles? Well, they turn around and give it back to the modelers because they want to see scale competition increase. They give a certain amount of money to each contest. And if the contest provides the NASA officers with the names of the entries and the contest list and so on and so forth, they will give that contest up to $250 per contest for holding the event. So all that money comes back to the modelers.
That's obviously really helpful for clubs that want to have an event and have a little bit of funds to help with the event. I also want to mention really quick before we move on, you mentioned the NASA Scale Classic that's coming up. We're going to have full coverage of that in Model Aviation magazine. So hopefully people will be able to attend, but whether you attend or not, you can look forward to seeing coverage on that event in an upcoming issue of Model Aviation.
I'm going to try to get Mike Barbie to send out some live feeds from that event too. And he's real good at that. And so it should be interesting. Some of the same airplanes that you are seeing in these pictures at the Nationals will be there. And anybody who has a fun scale model can fly at the Scale Classic. If you were at the Nationals or another NASA sponsored event this year, you can enter just about any of the classes. And but if you haven't been and you still want to try it, you want to go out there, go out and try the event. It's not complicated. It's fun. People will help you, and it's just a good time. And they'll have a big banquet on Saturday night, and you might win that B-25 if you enter.
Yeah, that's really a great prize. And like you said, charge the batteries, fuel it up, and go fly.
Yeah, absolutely. I know this coming weekend they're supposed to put the servos in it. And they've got the radio now, and looking forward to getting it ready to go.
Excellent. So back to the pictures. Are there some other pictures that you want to touch on, Stan?
Well, there's two pictures over on the left side. One showing the interior of Jack Buckley's Fairchild 24. And he built this model. It's a 155-inch wingspan. And the cockpit interior is it's really something to see. And then if you flip on down a couple of pictures, it shows the airplane in flight. And let's see, there you go. And the plane just flies so slowly, like the full scale. And it's able to do that because the wing loading is so light. It's almost like a motorized glider. But it scored, I think it finished second in master's class. And this was a completely scratch-built model. There were no kits. There were no plans used. Jack made his own plans and started that way.
Beautiful aircraft.
Yes, it is. Down at the bottom of that page, on the left column, is Mike Barbie's King Air. And Mike built that from a fiberglass semi-kit from Bob Patton. And Mike did a lot of changes to it, updated it, and it's electric powered. And the motors, speed controllers, and the gear system come from Germany. And in the January issue of Model Aviation, we'll be having more on that particular airplane. It takes 4 6-cell 5,000 milliamp battery packs to power each engine, or each motor. And that doesn't include the servos to operate the control surfaces, etc. But that's just for the motors. And it's very impressive in flight.
I don't know if this question is for you, Stan. We've got a question here from Greg Gimlick, who everybody knows was the former electric columnist for Model Aviation. And he says, ask him where his 40X is. I want it, so he'll know what I mean. Is that for you, Stan?
40X. I have no idea.
Maybe he's referring to Mike Barbie.
Maybe.
Are there any other photos that you want to touch on?
The other photo down at the bottom of the page is a young man who was at his first AMA Nationals, and he took first place in junior and first place in fun scale novice. And he was tickled to death. He had a good time, and he's looking forward to coming back next year. And that's the kind of thing we want to see. We had, I believe it was 9 entries in fun scale novice this year, and that's usually a very low participation class. So we were glad to see these newbies come out and learn and have a good time. And we encourage everybody else to do that too. Come to the Scale Classic this fall next month, or go to the Nationals next year. It's not anything that's intimidating.
Yeah, let's touch on that, Stan. So if someone was interested who's never participated in any kind of RC scale event, and they were interested to come, say, to the Nats and participate, tell our viewers what they could participate in or what would be involved.
Well, if you have a scale model, if it's an ARF or something that you just bought, you can still participate at the Scale National Championships with that model in RC Fun Scale Novice. And you can start out with a foam airplane. There was one gentleman there this year with a Cessna 150 that was a foam model from Horizon Hobbies. You could start out with an ARF where you have to put together several big pieces. Or if you're really industrious and stay at it and you want to build a kit, buy a kit and build that. There's only 9 maneuvers you have to fly. The 10th maneuver is realism in flight. And most of the time, if you start out with a Cub or something simple like that Cessna 150 from Horizon, you can take it and do very simple maneuvers like a flyby, straight flight out, procedure turn, straight flight back, and so on. And you really don't have to learn how to do a lot of different aerobatics and aerobatic maneuvers, which wouldn't be correct for the airplane anyway. So, and there's always somebody there that'll help you. Myself, Mike Barbie, Terry Nitch, there's all kinds of guys there that are willing to help and participate with you. And you can even get one of them to be your caller, so you'll have somebody to keep you out of trouble. So.
And if someone wanted to find out more, I'm sure that they could get all that information on the NASA website as to what is required and what flight maneuvers they may need to consider and all that, correct?
Yes, and they could go, there are diagrams for control line scale as well as RC scale on that website. And you can go there and look up information, or you could go to the NASA Facebook page and ask questions there. And anybody that's on that Facebook page, and we have people there on there from around the world, you can go there and they will be more than happy to help you. I get phone calls and emails all the time, and that's what I try to do, is to encourage new people.
Now, if somebody is just starting out, do they need to have any documentation with them?
If actually you don't, but I would suggest having one picture and it can even be on your cell phone of the airplane. It's like this airplane behind me right here. That's not a scale model. It's a what I call a fantasy model, and Gulf Oil Products. But if you got a picture of a P-51 or a J3 Cub or whatever, that will suffice to get you in fun scale. So it's pretty simple.
And there's a lot of people that are trying scale that way, correct?
Yes, there are, and a lot of the guys who fly in fun scale open also fly in expert or designer or other classes that they like to compete in also. So a lot of guys will bring 2 airplanes. So, but we have that fun scale novice event just so that the novices compete against each other and not have to fly against somebody that's been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would want to have to fly against somebody like Terry Nitch, for example, at their first contest.
No, but the thing is, they should go out there and watch what Terry does, watch what Mike Barbie does, or Jack Buckley, or somebody like that, because they got it down. They know what they're doing, and they're always glad to help anybody.
Well, since you've been a judge and you have been in charge of judges, maybe you could touch on just briefly for people that aren't familiar with scale competition, just a little bit about what's involved on that side of things, on the judging side.
On the judging side of things, you need to learn about full scale aircraft, and I did that a lot going to air shows. I worked at Oshkosh for 12 years in flyby operations. We gave pilots departure briefings. And then the air shows would start in the afternoon, and I'd watch the air shows till I had that pretty well pat down in my mind, and I'd go photograph airplanes the rest of the day. But you need to learn about takeoffs and landings and how the airplanes actually act in flight. And Oshkosh is a great place to do it, or if you can't go there, go to your local air show, look at videos, learn that way, and study the rule books, because that's what the judges look for the pilots to judge, fly their airplanes from. And when we get up there at the flight line, I have no friends. We don't judge Terry Nitch or Mike Barbie or Jack Buckley or whoever. We judge airplanes in flight. And that way I can keep the halo effect away from me, and I don't worry about that. And I just judge the airplane, whatever it does.
I mean, in essence, basically, you're trying to fool people into believing that this model is the real thing. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to fly it as scale as possible, where someone would almost believe it's the real airplane flying.
The art of illusion.
Yes.
That's exactly what it is. And
so if you're flying a Cessna from the 70s, you probably shouldn't be hovering it, for example.
No. I can bet that would get you a 0 in realism.
Right. And for the beginners, as you said, I mean, it can be any scale airplane, right? There's no limitations on that.
Any scale airplane, any size airplane. And, usually the bigger the airplane, the better it flies. And that's a saying that I've heard for years and years. Dave Platt came out in the late 70s with his 5th scale designs. And now people have graduated to quarter scale fighters and warbirds. And in some cases, like Joe Vermillion that you saw just a few minutes ago, his Albatross D5A is 3rd scale. And it has its own trailer to transport it with.
Right. Well, hopefully that novice class will continue to bring in more and more people. And then if you fly in the novice class, is there any rule about moving up? I mean, I guess if you win or you get a trophy, maybe you move up, or how does that work? Can you fly in the novice class more than once?
Yes. and it's a point system, and it's in the AMA rules and regulations for scale competition. You can go to AMA's website and look that up, and you can download that whole booklet, and I highly suggest doing that. There are maneuver diagrams in there also for each maneuver, and it helps to give you an idea of what you're supposed to do for the competition part. Uh, it's just a lot of fun, and you make lifelong friends. And the more you talk to people when you go to a contest, the more you learn, and you learn how to, back engineer something to make it work, even when it doesn't look like there's any way it could. And it's just a lot of fun. We've enjoyed it for years.
One of the things that I'm most impressed about, be it the Nats or any other contest I've been at, either at AMA or anywhere else, every time that I've been to a contest, I've noticed that people are very eager to jump in and help one another. It doesn't matter that they're competing against one another. If they have a problem with their aircraft, or they need a part, or they need some help,
yeah,
I've always seen people jump in to help. So, it is competition, but it's more about helping one another and the friendship and all that, because I've seen it countless times where someone that's competing directly against another person helps them so that they can continue to compete.
Yeah. And I know I've talked to John Boyko, and next year the Nats will be flown sometime early July. Don't know the exact dates yet, but he's told me that we will be flying on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And this year he did that, and it was an excellent call, because on Sunday at Muncie we received 8.6 inches of rain. And he got all the flights in on Saturday, and finished up about 6:30 Saturday night. So that was a good thing. And that's why he wants to start flying on Friday, is so we have a little breather for weather.
Yes, because in the past it's just been static judging on Friday.
Correct.
Right. Well, beyond the Nats, you've written a couple articles for the October issue. Obviously, it's not out yet, but we're going to give viewers a sneak peek. One of the two articles involves building. We'll touch on that one first, since you mentioned the Robin Hood 25 behind you. That did have some photos. There were some photos of that aircraft in this article. Could you kind of share? Obviously, as I said, this issue's not out, so no one's seen it. It does say building your first kit. Tell us a little bit about what to expect in this, or what you were trying to convey.
Well, you want to try to show people how simple it can be, and just follow the instructions that you receive. And this is an instruction booklet, and every kit that Old School Models has an instruction booklet like this. It's even got checkoff boxes. So when you finish one part, you can go to the next, check that off, so you keep your parts where they're supposed to be, and so on and so forth. I highly recommend that you dry fit all the parts before you start gluing things together in subsections. It's like the picture at the bottom of the page on the right page there. All those parts on that fuselage are dry fitted, and then they'll be glued in when I put them back together again. But you want to dry fit them, because this is a laser cut kit. The parts fit very precisely, and if you watch what you're doing and pay attention to the instructions, I don't think there's any way you can goof it up. So, but you can change your color schemes with a kit, unlike many of the ARFs. You can, make it different colors or whatever you want to do. And like this one, I decided to put the Gulf logo on it. And it's kind of a fantasy color scheme for the 1930s, what would have been flown during that time. And it's just a lot of fun. And I know my wife loves the color scheme because that's the only gas station that her father would stop at when they were on a road trip. So yeah, they had to go. They had to hold it until they got to the next Gulf station. He wouldn't stop anywhere else. So she loves the color scheme.
Well, I hope there was a lot of golf stations wherever they were traveling.
Me too.
Um, one thing I always say about building your own kit is it's a blank canvas.
Exactly.
You can do anything you want with it. And in the case of Old School Model Works, they offer a view of the aircraft, correct, where you can kind of test out your scheme.
I don't know how well this will show up, but yeah, you can use colored pencils or magic marker or whatever and design your own color scheme on the paper. And you can download this directly from their website and see how the colors will work. I thought the orange and dark blue would work real well with this airplane. It'd show up well in the air. And since we've published this article that'll be out in October, I've added a little bit more to it with the Gulf logos and stuff like that I received from Cali Graphics. And but with a plane like this, you can change the landing gear, you can change the front end, you could put a dummy radial engine on it, you could put a dummy inline straight engine in it, and it really lends itself to a lot of customization.
Well, also, I think that, nothing against older kits, but back when they were die cut or die crunch, as some people say, obviously the laser cut kits like this one that you built make life a lot easier for us. And so I would definitely encourage anyone to take on building a kit, because it's a great experience to take either, depending on how it's packaged, either a bag of wood or a box of wood and turn that into a flying aircraft. I mean, obviously, nothing against ours, nothing against ready to flies. Those are great. But, there is definitely a sense of accomplishment to build from a kit and see it fly successfully. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And I like getting in the shop and working on model. The thing with a laser cut kit like this one, there's a lot less sanding to have to do than you would with a die cut kit, because almost all of those you're going to have to really sand on the ribs, the wing ribs, some of the spars even, and parts to get it to where it's going to look like something when you cover it. Because if you don't, when you cover it and you don't sand a die cut kit, a lot of times all that rough stuff will show up through the covering. This one was covered with Ultra Coat orange and blue, and the stripes on the side were also done with Ultra Coat. And I used some trim tape for the white on the sides of the fuselage. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way it came out.
Well, it definitely looks great in the photos in the magazine, and what we can see there from the video. And it's interesting that it wasn't done. I mean, the plane was built and flyable when you gave us the pictures for the article, but you've continued to add to it, and that's kind of neat as well. If you want to do that, you can continue to add scale details or change things, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and it's make it your own. So that's the thing about a lot of these kits, and I've built several of Old School Model Works kits, and I've enjoyed every one of them. And can't say that about every kit I've ever built.
Well, this isn't the only article you have in the October issue. You have another one that focuses on the 50th Mint Julep Scale Contest. So for those that aren't familiar with the Mint Julep Scale Contest, could you give us a little backstory on that? And then we'll talk a little bit about the 50th.
Okay. The Mint Julep Scale Contest started 50 years ago at the Falls of Rough State Park in Kentucky. several years ago, they ended up closing down the hotels around the park. They closed down the campground and several other things. So Dale Arvin and his club decided to move it to a new site, and it's in southern Indiana. And they have an excellent flying site there. It's right on the river, and they've got like an 800, I want to say it's an 800-foot paved runway, 1,200-foot grass runway. And if you've ever flown there, it's fantastic. They have covered pits, asphalt parking area. If you have a camper, you can park there and have dry camping, which means you don't have any hookups. You have to stay self-contained, but it's a fantastic site. And Dale dedicated this particular event to his late wife, Mary Arvin. And Mary passed away earlier this year, and Dale personally bought all the trophies for the contest, and we had a pretty good turnout. We'd like to see more, but this was when gas was $5, $6, and $7 a gallon. And so, you know, I know some guys would want to show up, but the T28, T34 in the left picture up there is from John Boyko. And the middle photograph is a model of by Jeremy Arvin. And he bought a crashed airplane from Al Kretz and rebuilt it and competed with it in open scale. And the photo on the right up there is also Jeremy's airplane, and it was built from a Boss USA kit. Unique color scheme.
So the Mint Julep is also a scale contest. So what are the differences between going to the Nats that we talked about earlier and the Mint Julep? Is it very much the same?
It's very much the same. And you fly the same maneuvers, you fly the same number of rounds, same number of flights, and it's a little more laid back than the Nationals, and it's just a lot of fun. And a lot of the guys that are camping up there, they'll all get together at night and swap war stories, if you will, tell tales on each other. And I know Dale loves to talk about the time he ended up flying into a pond with one of his airplanes.
Oh.
So, yeah, we like to aggravate him just a little bit. But Dale, Mary, and their family have been an integral part of this contest for the entire length of years. And we're looking forward to next year. So if you can get down there, there's hotels within about 10 miles of the site. And if you can't stay in a hotel or whatever and want to camp, there's plenty of sites for camping. And fly your airplane, plenty of time to practice. You can get there early, get there like on a Wednesday and practice Wednesday, Thursday, and part of Friday, and then fly the competition Saturday and Sunday. So it's a great time. And there again, there's people there that will encourage you. They'll help you. And somebody I'm sure would be more than happy to call for a beginner and show you what you need to do and how you need to do it. And it's just a lot of fun.
Well, while you were talking about that, you received a really nice comment from Brett Becker. It says, Stan is a great asset to the hobby and scale modeling in particular.
Well, thank you, Brett. I appreciate it. I just try to do what I can.
And our friend Greg Gimlick clarified his question. He said the 40X, he was talking about your motorhome, the Fleetwood 40X coach. He says that I got you so focused on planes, you forgot you had it.
I wasn't thinking about motorhomes at all.
Right. We're talking about model airplanes, but a motorhome's a nice way to go to an event, right?
Very nice. Yeah,
and
we enjoy it.
Most cases, you can stay right on site, depending on the event.
Yes, you
So
can.
that
We,
definitely,
we can stay out in that motorhome for 7 days, fully self-contained. But it'll haul 100 gallons of fresh water, 70 gallons of gray, and 50 gallons of black water tank. So with the generators and everything, you can stay out at least for a week.
well, I remember when you were talking about getting it because you were spending a lot of money on hotels at the different events that you went to. So I guess out of curiosity, do you find it to be less expensive to drive the motorhome and stay in the motorhome overall?
No, no,
No?
no, because you spend it in maintenance. If you've got a motorhome, you want to take care of it. And everything with a diesel is a little more expensive than it is with a gas model. And, we just like it. It's nice to drive it down the road. You don't get blown every time a tractor trailer passes you. You don't get blown all over the place because it weighs so much. And this one's right at about 34,000 pounds. So it doesn't get blown around like some campers do on the road. And but it's got two big bays down at the bottom, and that holds a good selection of model airplanes and parts and stuff. So I like it, and we tow the car behind it.
I saw it obviously at the Nats, and it is beautiful for sure.
Well, thank
So
you.
we were given some sneak peeks in the magazines to features. So, San, is there any insight you want to provide on your column? Anything that you have in mind that you want to touch on in future issues, or anything at all that you want to talk about your column?
Well, in the November issue, in the column, I put in there Jack Buckley's Minimax. And that's another scratch built model that he actually got the drawings from the Minimax Corporation. And he blew those drawings up and built the model from the drawings. And this is what's called scratch building. It's not building from plans, but you take a full scale set of drawings and you build the model from it. And the model is incredibly accurate. He picked a color scheme where the full-scale aircraft was close enough that he could drive to it and photograph it, measure it, and so on and so forth. And I think he scored a 99 or 99.5 in static judging at the Nationals this year with that plane. And it was pretty impressive. It has a OS 1.2 four-stroke Surpass engine on the front, and everything else past that, Jack built it, all except for the tires. So it came out real nice. And he flies it when he's not flying at scale. He flies aerobatics with it. So I thought that was pretty interesting too.
When it comes to your column, Stan, as we mentioned, you've been writing this column for over 14 years. Do you ever find it challenging to come up with topics, or do you find it very easy to come up with topics every time?
I've always got more stuff that I could put in if I had more space. At one point, I was writing the column 12 months out of the year, and I still never had a problem coming up with information about scale models, scale events, tools, shop tricks, and all the other things that go along with it. It's there. And one of the things I find is that with the NASA Facebook page and so many modelers going on that, that you can learn there. Another great place is rcscalebuilder.com. RC Scale Builder has a website where you can join. I think the rate now is $25 a year. And you can, let's say you've got a Boss USA quarter scale Fokker D7 or a J3 Cub. You can go to that web page and you can scroll down and find the Boss USA tab, and you can go to different selections in that tab where people have built these airplanes, and they'll go through the whole process from start to finish of building that model. And that gives you a lot of insight as to what kind of problems you might run into, or some of the cool things you can do and not even realize when you're doing it. So it's a big help for a lot of modelers. And there's modelers on there not just from the United States, but around the world. And they've got some pretty interesting airplanes on there.
Well, you mentioned around the world. As we mentioned, with you being a chief judge and judging events, you've actually had the opportunity to go to several other countries and participate in aero modeling, correct?
Yes, I have. Yeah, and you go there and you make friends, and they know when I get up in the judge's chair that that goes away. But you learn things about different people from all over the world. And the one thing that I found for the most part is everybody is pretty much the same. You want to see your kids do better than you're doing. You want to learn as much as you can. You want to have a good time, and that's what we do. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, we're almost out of time, believe it or not, Stan, but I want to give you the opportunity if there's anything that we didn't touch on that you'd like to share.
Well, I received this kit from Buzzard Models, and it's a little foamy, and I'm going to be putting it together, and I'll be sending something in to you about it. It comes just like you see it here, and these parts will form the size of the fuselage. Here's the motor, speed controller, servos, all the power parts come in one package. And for about $110, you can build a nice indoor flyer, or in very calm weather conditions, you could fly it outdoors. And I built their Fokker-ish, which is kind of a Fokker DR1. And as you probably saw in an earlier issue of Model Aviation, I put a scale paint scheme on it. I've had a lot of fun with it. And I'm looking forward to getting this one. And I imagine it's going to go on a few camping trips.
So those that might be interested in that one, what's the title of that one?
This one is the Aronkish.
The Aronkish.
Yes. And for about $110, you can build this thing and put it together. I paint them with pastel paints. It goes on easy. You don't have to put it on thick. And use foam safe CA or epoxy when you're building it. And just like the other kit we talked about, the old school models kits, dry fit all the parts before you start putting glue on something. You'll be glad you did.
Yes. And if it's a balsa kit, sand it a little bit before you put the covering on it. That's
Yes.
one of the best tips for getting a nice covering job.
Yes, it is.
Well, Stan, I do appreciate you spending some time with us today. And I, obviously want to thank you for all your contributions to Model Aviation and the NATS and AMA. And, you've done a lot of articles for us, a lot of columns for us, a lot of event coverage for us. So appreciate all that you do to support the community.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I enjoy doing it.
Absolutely. As a reminder to everyone, next month's show, as planned right now, will be coming to you live from the SIG Lion, and we'll have Hazel Sig on the show. So I'm really excited about that. The first time we've taken this show on the road, so I hope that you will be able to join us, and we will look forward to seeing you then. Thank you, Stan, and we'll see you next month.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good evening.